The disappearing buyer's journey. How agentic protocols are replacing discovery, evaluation, and transaction. How is agentic commerce changing the buyer's journey? And what does it mean for mid-market businesses right now? Your customers are increasingly delegating search, comparison, and even purchase decisions to AI assistants. The trend is now reflected in how Google measures websites. On May 7, 2026, Google released Lighthouse 13.3 with a new agentic browsing audit category, testing whether sites expose the artifacts AI agents need to read them. LXMS, TXT, WebMCP, machine parsable content structure. The default config rollout to page speed insights followed within 2 weeks. An independent industry scan by Bridge2 Agent of 38 e-commerce stores found an average AI visibility score of 31 out of 100, with 24% of stores effectively invisible to AI search. Meanwhile, AI referral traffic to U.S. retailers grew 393% year over year in Q1 2026, Adobe Analytics. And Google's A2A protocol now runs in production at 150 plus organizations, including Microsoft, AWS, Salesforce, SAP, and ServiceNow. The website most mid-market businesses operate today was designed for human readers, and a growing share of their buyers are sending agents first. 3 weeks ago, you might have asked ChatGPT to recommend a CRM, or your assistant did when comparing meeting tools, or your teenager did planning a trip and shortlisting hotels. The behavior is normal enough now that most of us stopped noticing we were doing it. What changed is the audience your business is being evaluated by. For a growing share of purchase categories, the first thing that sees your company is not a person scrolling your website. It is an AI assistant, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Copilot, or Perplexity, reading your site on a customer's behalf, comparing you against alternatives, and surfacing whatever it concludes back to the human who asked. The shift is no longer marginal. Adobe Analytics tracked AI referral traffic to U.S. retailers at plus 393% year over year in Q1 2026. AI-referred visitors converted 42% better than standard organic traffic, a complete reversal from a year ago when AI traffic underperformed by 38%. Shopify defaulted agentic storefronts on for all eligible U.S. merchants on March 24, 2026, as part of its Winter 26 edition. Google's agent-to-agent protocol now runs in production at 150 plus organizations, including Microsoft, AWS, Salesforce, SAP, and ServiceNow. On May 7, 2026, Google released Lighthouse 13.3 with a new agentic browsing audit category, the same tool that has graded sites on speed and SEO for a decade. The new category tests 3 signals: an LLNS TXT file declaring what content a site offers, a WebMCP registration exposing what the site can do, and a content structure agents can parse. The default configuration rolled out to page speed insights within 2 weeks of release. Independent industry observations suggest how few sites are passing the bar. A scan by Bridge2 Agent of 38 e-commerce stores found an average AI visibility score of 31 out of 100, with 24% of stores effectively invisible to AI search. The buyer's journey isn't going to change. For a growing share of purchase categories, it already has. And the website you have today was designed for the wrong audience. What agent readable actually means for your site. When Google adds something as a Lighthouse audit category, the move is rarely cosmetic. Lighthouse is the public developer tool that web teams use to grade their own sites on performance, accessibility, and SEO. When a new audit shows up there, it tends to signal what Google intends to weight later in its ranking and citation systems. Core Web Vitals followed exactly this pattern. It appeared in Lighthouse first and became a ranking factor a couple of years later. So, agentic browsing arriving in Lighthouse is less about developer culture and more about where the company is pointing the next round of weighting. What does agent readable actually mean for a business operator? In plain terms, 3 things. First, a small structured file at the root of your site that tells AI assistants what your company does, what content lives where, and what permissions apply. A kind of plain English site index written for machines rather than humans. Second, a handshake mechanism that lets an AI agent discover what your site can do, not just what it says. Book a meeting, check availability, request a quote. Third, a content structure that an agent can read without needing to look at the page the way a human would. These are not aesthetic requirements. They are machine interface requirements, and the majority of websites currently fail them, including most mid-market businesses with otherwise well-designed sites. For context on what this Lighthouse audit is measuring against, read what Google's AI optimization guide means for mid-market strategy. Published the week of the guide's release in May 2026. The citation economy logic developed there applies directly here. The agent-readable website isn't trying to rank for clicks. It's trying to be cited in a recommendation that a buyer's AI assistant surfaces without the buyer ever performing a search. The 31 out of 100 average AI visibility score on Bridge2Agent's industry scan isn't just a statistic. It's the gap between businesses that will be visible to agent-mediated buyers and those that won't be. And that gap is already open. A map of the Agentic protocol stack. 5 protocols are now in active production or open standard status. Understanding which layer each one operates in is prerequisite to understanding what the buyer's journey actually looks like when agents run it. MCP, Model Context Protocol, the tool and data layer. Anthropic's open source protocol launched in late 2024. Its tunneling infrastructure, MCP tunnels, was announced as a research preview at Code with Claude London on May 19, 2026, alongside a public beta of self-hosted sandboxes. MCP gives agents structured access to tools, databases, and APIs. It's the layer that lets an AI assistant query a product catalog, read a company's published methodology, or pull a pricing sheet without a human intermediary. When we talk about our internal AI operating system built on Claude, MCP is the integration layer that connects it to live data. The article on Claude becoming an operating system covers why MCP changes what AI infrastructure means at the platform level. A2A, agent-to-agent protocol, the handshake layer. Google's A2A protocol enables agents built on different systems to discover each other, negotiate tasks, and collaborate. As of May 2026, A2A runs in production at more than 150 organizations, including Microsoft, AWS, Salesforce, SAP, and ServiceNow. That production footprint, not a proof of concept, a live deployment, is the signal that A2A is the coordination layer the enterprise has chosen. The agent arms race between the major AI labs covers the competitive context, but the protocol-level story is that Google's open standard approach is winning the enterprise. AP2, Agent Payments Protocol, the transaction authorization layer. Google developed AP2 and donated it to the FIDO Alliance on April 28, 2026, alongside 60 contributing organizations including MasterCard, American Express, PayPal, Adyen, Coinbase, Etsy, Intuit, Salesforce, ServiceNow, and WorldPay. AP2 creates a standard handshake for agent-initiated payments, a mechanism that allows an AI agent to complete a purchase on behalf of a user with cryptographic authorization rather than form-fill checkout. Visa, MasterCard, and Stripe have all aligned to compatible standards. UCP, Universal Commerce Protocol, the commerce coordination layer. UCP is the layer that connects agentic discovery to agentic transaction, the protocol backbone that allows Shopify merchants to expose their catalog, inventory, and checkout to A2A-compatible agents. Google and Shopify announced UCP as a co-developed open standard in January 2026. ACP, Agentic Commerce Protocol, the AI Commerce Surface Handshake. ACP was co-developed by OpenAI and Stripe and open-sourced at the launch of ChatGPT's Instant Checkout in September 2025. It defines the handshake between AI commerce surfaces, ChatGPT and others, and merchant payment infrastructure. Skills architecture and skills libraries, as Anthropic described at the AI Engineer Summit, are part of how agents understand what a business does and route commerce tasks accordingly. These 5 protocols aren't competing. They operate at different layers and are designed to interoperate. The result is an emerging stack where an agent discovers a business, MCP-Web MCP, negotiates a task with another agent, A2A, evaluates the business's offering against structured content, and initiates a payment, AP2 UCP. The buyer's journey compressed into a protocol handshake. Discovery is no longer a search. Adobe's Q1 2026 Digital Economy Index found that AI referral traffic to U.S. retailers grew 393% year over year. That number is large enough to register as noise. What makes it signal is the conversion behavior attached to it. AI-referred visitors converted 42% better than standard organic traffic. In 2025, AI-referred traffic converted 38% worse than organic. The flip happened in 1 year as AI assistants moved from novelty to primary research tool for a meaningful share of buyers. On March 24, 2026, Shopify activated agentic storefronts as the default for all eligible U.S. merchants as part of its Winter 26 edition. Shopify shipped Agentic Discovery, Agents.md, Agentic Sitemaps, UCP Discovery, to every merchant store as a default-on feature. Products now syndicate across ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Microsoft Copilot automatically. Merchants opt out rather than opt in. The default-on architecture is the signal worth noticing. Shopify treated agent readability as infrastructure for every store on its platform, not as an opt-in feature operators need to find and configure. One number to use carefully. Salesforce reported $262 billion in AI-influenced 2025 holiday commerce. That figure is not agent-initiated transaction volume. It's AI-assisted human purchases, a different category that includes AI-powered recommendations surfaced to human buyers who then made the decision and completed checkout. The actual share of strictly agent-initiated transactions, purchases where the agent completes the checkout without a human click, remains small as of mid-2026, even as the AI-influenced share grows quickly. The Salesforce number is real and directionally useful. Conflating AI-influenced with agent-initiated overstates where the infrastructure is today. The 393% and 42% numbers from Adobe are the more relevant signal for understanding what's already happening with actual agent-mediated commerce. The strategic implication for any operator: your distribution surface is expanding beyond the search engine. The shift from search rankings to distribution channels, which this firm wrote about during the ChatGPT app launch moment, has accelerated materially in 2026. Agents running on ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Perplexity, and Copilot now refer buyers to products and services. The criteria they use for recommendation aren't based on ad spend or page rank. They're based on structured, machine-readable content and whether your business has built it. Evaluation is no longer human read. When a buyer's AI assistant researches a vendor on their behalf, the evaluation process looks nothing like a human scrolling through a website. The agent reads structured data. It parses your LLMs.txt to understand what content you've published and what you want it to surface. It reads your FAQ schema to find structured answers to common questions. It scans your published methodology, if you have one in a machine parsable format, and cross-references it against the buyer's stated criteria. If you have published case studies with structured markup, those get weighted. If you don't, your competitor who does gets the recommendation. This is the same argument we made about citation architecture in the context of AI overviews in search. Citation is an architecture outcome, not a content outcome. The AI ROI map article frames the maturity progression from stage 1, discrete task assistance, through stage 4, living intelligence that compounds, and the evaluation dynamic applies at stage 4. A business operating at stage 4 is one whose knowledge, methodology, and decision frameworks are structured, maintained, and machine accessible. That architecture is now both an internal operating advantage and an external discovery surface. The practical test: if a buyer's AI assistant spent 90 seconds researching your firm today, what would it find? If the answer is a website designed for human readers with some text about what we do, the agent would likely surface a competitor whose structured content gives it more to work with. The agent isn't making a judgment call. It's returning the result it can actually parse and compare. Anthropic's MCP Tunnel's public beta, May 19, 2026, is the specific infrastructure that enables businesses to expose their capabilities, data, and tools to agents over the open web, not just inside a closed platform. A law firm that exposes its practice areas via MCP with structured definitions and qualifications becomes discoverable by any A2A compatible agent operating on behalf of a client who needs legal help. A mid-market consulting firm that exposes its methodology, engagement structure, and case study architecture becomes a structured recommendation option rather than a website that has to be navigated. The evaluation phase doesn't require the buyer to visit the site at all. Transaction is no longer a form. The payment layer is the furthest along in DTC and e-commerce and the furthest behind in professional services. But it's worth understanding precisely where things stand in May 2026 because the infrastructure being built in DTC today is the infrastructure professional services will encounter in 18 to 36 months. Stripe's Agentic Commerce Suite is live. Etsy has integrated it. The suite allows AI agents to complete purchases and including recurring subscriptions with cryptographic authorization without requiring the human buyer to touch a payment form. The agent presents the purchase for confirmation. A human authorization step remains in most current implementations, and then executes the transaction. MasterCard's Agent Pay completed the first authenticated agentic transactions in Australia in early 2026. Visa Intelligent Commerce is open to businesses worldwide. Both payment networks have donated compatible standards to the FIDO Alliance alongside Google's AP2. A coordination move that signals the payment rails for agentic commerce are being standardized at the industry level, not fragmented across proprietary systems. The cautionary signal in this stack: OpenAI's Instant Checkout, a pilot that allowed ChatGPT to complete purchases directly, was sunset on March 24, 2026. Approximately 6 months after launch, fewer than 30 Shopify merchants had integrated before it was replaced. The lesson isn't that agentic checkout doesn't work, it's that infrastructure consistently runs ahead of consumer readiness and trust. The Stripe and MasterCard deployments are more durable precisely because they work within existing payment authorization frameworks rather than creating new ones. And OpenAI's revised approach now leaves checkout with the merchant while AI handles discovery. Consumer trust in agent-initiated payments will build more slowly than the protocol infrastructure underneath it. The current honest picture: agent-initiated transactions remain a small share of overall e-commerce as of mid-2026, even as the AI-influenced and AI-referred share grows quickly. The infrastructure to scale agent-initiated commerce is shipping. The consumer trust and legal frameworks underneath it are still catching up, which is exactly what the next section covers. The liability and trust gap nobody has solved. The optimism of the previous 3 sections, growing AI referral traffic, shipping infrastructure, production-level protocols, should not carry you past a gap that is open right now in Q2 2026, with no clear resolution in sight. The International Monetary Fund published a note in April 2026 on agentic payment systems. The finding that matters for any operator considering opening their business to agent-initiated purchases: under existing legal frameworks, there is no clear answer to who authorized an agent-initiated payment. The agent executed the transaction. The buyer's authorization was implicit. They configured the agent and gave it a spending mandate. But the formal authorization chain that existing consumer protection law requires does not cleanly apply. Disputes, chargebacks, and liability for fraudulent agent transactions fall into a legal gray zone that regulators have identified but not resolved. The IMF proposed a Know Your Agent framework alongside Know Your Customer, a parallel identity and authorization layer for AI agents operating in financial contexts. That framework does not yet exist in any jurisdiction's law. It's a proposal. Separately, Arcosa Labs' 2026 Agentic AI Security Report, a global survey of 300 enterprise leaders across security, fraud, identity, and AI functions, found that 97% expect a material AI agent-driven security or fraud incident within the next 12 months. 6% of security budgets are allocated to agentic AI security. The gap between expectation and investment is not a readiness problem. It's a recognition problem. Organizations see the risk but haven't built the response. This is the human's first moment in the agentic commerce argument. The Agentic Organization ROI framework frames it as humans above the loop. The principle that consequential decisions require a human authorization point, not because agents are unreliable, but because accountability requires a human who made a choice. In agentic commerce, the authorization gap isn't a technical problem. The cryptographic authorization in AP2 and Stripe's implementation is robust. The gap is that consumer protection law, fraud liability frameworks, and business terms of service were written for transactions where a human read something and clicked a button. Agents don't click buttons. The humans first architecture argument. Governance designed around the wrong assumption makes security incidents more likely, not less. Applies directly to the decision about when and how to open your business to agent-initiated transactions, what this means for mid-market professional services, and what to do in the next 12-18 months. Professional services lags DTC by 18 to 36 months on real agentic transaction surface. That's worth saying plainly. A consulting firm, law practice, accounting firm, or technology services provider will not have an AI agent completing engagements on behalf of clients anytime soon. The friction, trust requirements, and regulatory complexity in professional services make agent-initiated transactions a genuinely distant scenario for most categories. But that framing is the wrong one for the next 12-18 months, because it focuses on the transaction phase while the evaluation phase is already changing. Right now, in Q2 2026, prospects use AI assistants to research service providers before they ever make contact. A buyer evaluating AI consulting firms asks their assistant to summarize the options, compare methodologies, and identify which firms specialize in their sector. The assistant reads whatever structured content it can find. If your methodology is buried in PDF brochures and your case studies are narrative testimonials with no structured markup, the assistant returns a thin result or skips you. If a competitor has published their engagement framework with FAQ schema, structured case study markup, and a machine-readable summary of their approach, the assistant returns a richer result. And the buyer's first impression is shaped by that asymmetry before they ever visit a website. The architecture engagement framework we use with clients is built partly on this recognition. Your discovery surface, evaluation surface, and engagement surface need to be designed as a coherent system, not as separate afterthoughts. 4 concrete commitments that mid-market professional services operators can make before October 2026. Audit your LLMs.txt. If you don't have one, write one. A well-structured LLMs.txt tells AI assistants what your firm does, what content you publish, what your areas of expertise are, and what you want agents to surface on your behalf. This is a 2-hour task with material impact on agent-mediated discovery. Expose your methodology in structured format, your engagement approach, your frameworks, your published thinking. If it exists only in human-readable prose, it's invisible to agent evaluation. FAQ schema, Defined term markup and structured outlines are the practical tools. The bosio.digital architecture we use for our own published content is built on these patterns. Decide whether your engagement intake is agent-friendly. The question isn't whether to automate intake. It's whether an AI assistant helping a prospect could actually find and start your intake process. A form buried behind 3 navigation clicks with no structured metadata explaining what it's for fails the agent readability test. A structured contact page with schema markup and a clear description of what happens after contact succeeds. Pick one architectural commitment and ship it before October. The failure mode here is the same as with any AI adoption initiative: paralysis from trying to solve the whole problem at once. The AI ROI map frames this as the stage 1 trap, waiting for the complete architecture before taking any action. Pick the highest leverage item from the 3 above and complete it. The compounding starts from the first change, not from the complete overhaul. The handshake that already started. The framing of agentic commerce as a future state phenomenon is wrong, and that framing is doing real harm to operators who are using it to justify delayed action. Google has shipped the audit. Shopify has shipped the endpoints. Stripe has shipped the payment infrastructure. MasterCard and Visa have donated the standards. The IMF has identified the liability gap. The 31 out of 100 average AI visibility score on Bridge2Agent's industry scan tells you where the current field sits. The buyer's journey isn't going to change. It is changing. The question for mid-market operators isn't whether to prepare for agentic commerce. It's whether you can see the test you're already being graded on, and whether you're willing to spend 2 hours writing an LLMS XT file that might determine whether an agent recommends you or your competitor to a buyer. You'll never know you lost